She was born sick, stayed poor, and died quietly. And yet, today she lies beneath glass unchanged, her skin smooth, her body intact, her face peaceful as if asleep. It's been over a century, and still, she refuses to rot. This is the story of Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, the village girl, whose death was supposed to be the end, but became the beginning of something no one, not even the church, fully understands. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Her name was Marie Bernard Soubirous, but to most she's just Bernadette. She was born in 1844 in Lourdes, a forgotten village tucked into the base of the French Pyrenees. The kind of place that existed quietly damp, gray, and stubborn until something supernatural broke the silence. Bernadette was poor. That kind of generational bone-deep poverty that leaves children coughing in the cold. She had asthma. She couldn't read. By the time she was a teenager, she was fetching firewood barefoot in winter. And then on February 11, 1858, she said she saw something. She called her the Lady in White, a luminous figure who appeared in a grotto near the river. Bernadette knelt, stared, prayed. It wasn't a vision of fire or terror, just something other, radiant, kind. It happened again and again. By the third appearance, word had spread. The townspeople came first, then priests, then doubters, then Parisian journalists. Crowds gathered. Bernadette remained calm, almost dazed. Each time the lady appeared, Bernadette would fall into silence, eyes fixed, lips, moving hands trembling. Then she'd return quietly and tell them what was said. The lady, she claimed, had a message, a call to prayer, a request for penance, and eventually a name: I am the Immaculate Conception. Now here's the twist. Bernadette didn't even know what that meant. She was illiterate. She couldn't explain the doctrine. And yet she repeated the phrase word for word, just as theologians had described it in Rome. That moment changed everything. The church, skeptical at first, took notice. Bishops were dispatched. Reports were compiled. The grotto was studied. And soon, Lourdes became a destination. Not a village, a shrine. But for Bernadette, it wasn't a triumph. It was exile. As the town boomed with pilgrims and miracles, she was sent away first to school, then to a convent. The church wanted her quiet, hidden, preserved. She was only 22 when she joined the Sisters of Charity in Nevers, far from the noise of Lourdes. There, in the stillness of the cloister, her body began to fail. Tuberculosis, chronic pain, severe untreated asthma. She spent her days in bed, her nights in coughing fits. And yet she never recanted, never embellished, never tried to profit from her story. Her final words: Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for me. She died on April 16, 1879, at the age of 35, buried beneath the chapel in Nevers, wrapped in a simple habit marked with a wooden cross. And that by all earthly logic should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because 3 decades later, in 1909, her grave was opened. Not out of curiosity, but out of procedure. You see, for someone to be declared a saint, the church must inspect the remains. Its standard protocol: bones, relics, proof. What they found was not bones. It was her, still whole, still soft, her skin unbroken, her hands folded just as they were the day she died. Even her rosary remained. The doctor on site, an atheist, refused to speak at first. But eventually he whispered, "This is not possible." And it wasn't just one inspection. The church ordered 3 exhumations, 1909, 1919, and again in 1925. Each time the result was the same. No odor, no decay. A body preserved without embalming, without chemicals, without explanation. Yes, some parts had darkened. The nose had collapsed, the eyes had faded, but the flesh still soft, the joints still movable. It was uncorrupted, and in Catholic tradition that means something more than medical. It means miracle. But here's where the debate begins. Historians still argue whether the preservation was natural due to the cold, dry conditions of her crypt or supernatural. Some suggest waxing techniques were used in the final viewing, especially on the face and hands, which today appear unnaturally smooth. Others insist the preservation predated any restoration. The Church, for its part, doesn't claim a scientific miracle. It simply presents the body. You can visit her today, in a glass casket in the chapel of St. Gildard in Nevers, France. She lies there, unmoving, untouched by time, and the pilgrims come by the thousands. They kneel, they cry, they stare, not because they see proof, but because they see her, the girl who saw a lady in white, the girl who gave away her fame and suffered in silence, the girl who, even in death, refused to leave. They say time erases everything. Memories blur, marble crumbles, skin rots. But not hers. When the tomb was opened in 1909, Saint Bernadette had been dead for 30 years, and yet her body lay there like she had fallen asleep just moments earlier. There was no embalming, no refrigeration, no explanation, and for the Church that meant something rare and holy. But for the doctors, it meant confusion. The official record, signed by multiple witnesses, including physicians with no allegiance to the Church, described her body as remarkably well preserved. Her skin was soft, her limbs were pliable. The crucifix in her hand had oxidized, but her fingers had not. That detail, that the metal rusted while the flesh remained untouched, became one of the most whispered facts in Vatican circles. One doctor allegedly ran tests on small tissue samples, trying to understand the preservation. He expected brittleness, discoloration, perhaps even internal liquefaction. What he found was normal muscle fiber, slightly dried, but still intact, still pink. And here comes the twist. Bernadette's body was transferred to a new casket, not a coffin, but a glass and bronze reliquary custom, built sealed and displayed in the chapel of St. Gildard, the convent where she had spent her final years. She was no longer hidden in a crypt. She was on display, and with that something shifted. Pilgrims no longer came to read about her. They came to see her. Some described the experience as sacred, others as unsettling, because in that quiet room under soft yellow light lay a human body, not mummified, not skeletal, just there, still, eyes closed, lips faintly parted, the face expressionless but somehow peaceful. But here's where it gets complicated. In the 1920s, after the final exhumation, French sculptors were commissioned to create light wax masks to cover her face and hands. A decision made not to deceive, but to preserve. The features, after all, had begun to dry. The skin had darkened. The convent feared her peaceful image would deteriorate into something the pilgrims could not bear. And so the mask was applied, thin, delicate, modeled from photographs and molds taken at the time of death. And this, for many skeptics, is where belief begins to crack. Because now, the question becomes, are we looking at a miracle or a mannequin? Historians still debate this. The Church never denied the presence of the wax coverings, but it also never called them masks. Instead, they're referred to as light preservation enhancements. The rest of the body, arms, torso, legs, remains untouched and unaltered. The bones are there, the muscles are there, but the face you see today, it's a mix. Part saint, part sculpture, part mystery. Here's the quirky bit. Despite the global attention, the room where Bernadette lies is remarkably small. Visitors often comment on the intimacy of the space, the silence, the sense that time slows down, and some swear they see her breathing. Of course she isn't, but the illusion, the stillness, the smooth skin, the soft lighting creates a powerful psychological effect. In death, she's become a reflection, a mirror in which people project faith, doubt, hope, or fear. And she just absorbs it. Every day for over a century, people have stared through that glass. Some seeking proof, others comfort, a few silence. But whether you believe or not, there's no denying one thing: Bernadette's body should have decomposed. That's what nature does, and yet it didn't. One theory offered by scientists is adipocere formation, a rare process where fatty tissue turns to a wax-like substance under specific conditions. Cold, damp, slightly alkaline environments can create this preservation effect. But even adipocere doesn't explain everything, because Bernadette's burial site was simple. The climate wasn't ideal, and the process usually distorts the face, yet hers remained strikingly human. Too intact for science, too physical for metaphor, too real to ignore. And this is where the story becomes something else entirely. Because whether her body is incorrupt through divine means or rare biology, she has become a symbol, not just of miracles, but of endurance, of the tension between flesh and faith, between the seen and the unseen, between what dies and what doesn't. Even in Catholic tradition, incorruptibility is rare. Less than 150 saints have ever been declared incorrupt. And even among them, Bernadette is unusual. She wasn't a martyr. She wasn't royalty. She didn't command armies or endure torture. She was just a girl, asthmatic, poor, forgotten by most of the world. And yet her body lies preserved when emperors and kings turned to dust. That's the paradox that keeps drawing people back. She should have disappeared, but instead she remains, and not in legend, in flesh. If you visit Never, France, the first thing you'll hear is the silence. Not just the silence of a small town tucked away in the Loire Valley, but the silence of the chapel where she rests. The air is still. The floor creaks. And then beneath a veil of dim light, there she is. Saint Bernadette, encased in a glass coffin, her body angled slightly to the left as if turned gently by sleep, her habit crisp, her face serene, her hands folded with a rosary between them. And you realize she doesn't look dead. Not embalmed, not preserved by science, just resting. And that's the part no one truly knows how to explain, because death leaves signs: the collapse of tissue, the drying of skin, the twisting of the mouth. Nature has no patience for dignity. But Bernadette, her dignity has endured for over 140 years. Even skeptics lower their voices when they stand before her. It's not about belief anymore. It's about presence. That quiet pressure that something is different here. And maybe that's the point, because the real mystery may not be in her flesh, but in us. Why does she make us pause? Why does this one woman who never sought fame, whose miracles were quiet, whose body was hidden for decades, still draw pilgrims from across the world? Historians still argue over the nature of her preservation. Some say it was a unique combination of soil temperature and chemistry. Others insist her body was prepared in ways not fully documented. And yet no one, not even the Church, has definitively claimed it was supernatural. The Vatican officially declared her incorrupt, but avoided language that promised a miracle. It left space for wonder, for doubt, for both. And that's rare, because we live in a world obsessed with certainty. Proof, evidence, data. But Bernadette, she just is. No declarations, no dramatic gestures. Just a body that continues to resist the one thing none of us can escape. A body that seems to whisper without words. Not yet. There's a curious pattern among those who visit. Few leave unchanged. Some feel peace, others feel uneasy. Some cry, not knowing why. Others can't meet her eyes, though hers are closed. And then, there are the dreams. Nuns at the convent have reported them for decades. Dreams of Bernadette speaking, walking, praying. Not visions, just dreams. Like echoes caught in the walls. They never describe her voice the same way. Some say it's soft, others say it's firm, but always familiar. Like someone you forgot you remembered. And maybe that's her final mystery. Not the incorrupt skin, not the medical reports, but the way she lingers in memory. The body may be what they come to see, but it's the feeling they carry away. Something beyond explanation, beyond dogma, beyond science. A stillness. A question that won't die. Remember earlier the physician who attended the first exhumation, the one who refused to speak. Later in life, when asked again, he finally replied, "I do not believe in miracles, but I have no explanation for what I saw." That is Bernadette. She doesn't ask you to believe. She just waits. There's one more thing. In 2015, a scientific team visited Nevers to re-photograph the body for archival purposes. They used modern equipment, high-resolution imaging thermographic scans, tissue contrast modeling. The results: no signs of embalming fluid, no structural inserts, and, most unusually, no evidence of biological decomposition beyond the nose and eyelids. A priest present at the scan reportedly whispered, "She is still intact." So is the mystery. Some call her the queen who refused to rot, not because she ruled anything, but because in a world of dust and decay she remained. And that may be the miracle after all. Not that she defied death, but that somehow she held on to her story long after her voice was gone. A girl who saw something divine, a woman who lived in silence, and a body that continues to speak, even now. And now, as the chapel dims and the air settles, let's step back. Let her sleep again. Let the mystery remain. There are no final answers here, no declarations, just a body that refused to rot, and a world still wondering why. Not everything must be explained. Some things are meant to be felt. So as you close your eyes tonight, picture her stillness. Picture the glass. Picture the hush. And remember, some stories are told in flesh. Others are told in silence.